In this video, we will explore 10 critical insights from C.S. Lewis's perspective, as presented through the character Screwtape. Our focus will be on understanding the nuanced aspects of spiritual life, including the nature of human existence, the dynamics of divine interaction, and strategies of spiritual opposition. We will examine topics such as the balance between spirit and flesh, the purpose of suffering, the essence of faith beyond emotion, and the true source of pleasure. Additionally, we'll discuss the misconceptions of ownership, the value of humility, the significance of living in the present, and the importance of recognizing faith as an ultimate goal. 1. We are spiritual beings in human flesh. Screwtape writes, "Humans are amphibians, half spirit and half animal. As spirits, they belong to the eternal world, but as animals, they inhabit time. This means that while their spirit can be directed to an eternal object, their bodies, passions, and imaginations are in continual change, for to be in time means to change. Their nearest approach to constancy, therefore, is undulation, the repeated return to a level from which they repeatedly fall back, a series of troughs and peaks." In his astute observation, Screwtape illuminates the dual nature of humanity. We are entities of a complex duality, encompassing both the ethereal and the earthly. He posits that humans exist as a kind of amphibian, straddling two distinct realms, the spiritual and the temporal. Our spirits, tethered to the eternal, aspire towards the immutable and the divine, seeking to align with an everlasting essence beyond the confines of our earthly existence. Yet, as creatures of flesh, we are irrevocably anchored in the realm of time, a domain where change is the only constant. Our bodily desires, our passions, and the flights of our imagination are subject to the inexorable march of time, transforming with each passing moment. This temporal condition subjects humans to a rhythm of rise and fall, an undulation akin to the ebb and flow of the tides. Our journey towards spiritual constancy is marked by a succession of ascents and descents, moments of enlightenment and clarity, followed by times of faltering and retreat. This cyclical pattern of peaks and troughs reflects our struggle to maintain a steadfast course towards the eternal, amidst the vicissitudes of our mortal coil. 2. God really does love us and uses our pain and suffering to bring us closer to Himself. Screwtape writes, "Now, it may surprise you to learn that in his God's efforts to get permanent possession of a soul, He relies on the troughs even more than on the peaks. Some of His special favorites have gone through longer and deeper troughs than anyone else. The reason is this: to us, a human is primarily food. Our aim is the absorption of its will into ours, the increase of our own area of selfhood at its expense. But the obedience which the enemy demands of men is quite a different thing. One must face the fact that all the talk about His love for men and His service being perfect freedom is not, as one would gladly believe, mere propaganda, but an appalling truth. He really does want to fill the universe with a lot of loathsome little replicas of Himself, creatures whose life, on its miniature scale, will be qualitatively like His own, not because He has absorbed them, but because their wills freely conform to His. We want cattle who can finally become food. He wants servants who can finally become sons. We want to suck in. He wants to give out. We are empty and would be filled. He is full and flows over." Screwtape's reflections offer a profound insight into the nature of divine love and the purpose behind the trials and tribulations that beset the human journey. It reveals an unexpected truth that God, in his infinite wisdom and boundless love, places a greater reliance on the valleys of our existence, the times of pain and suffering, than on the peaks of joy and triumph. It is within these deeper and more prolonged troughs that the divine craftsman works most intimately, shaping the souls of his cherished ones, drawing them closer to himself in a communion of profound depth and significance. To the cynic, the notion that God utilizes our sufferings as instruments of divine proximity might seem paradoxical, even disconcerting. Yet Screwtape elucidates that this divine strategy is born not of a desire to subjugate or to assimilate, but of a longing for genuine fellowship and kinship. Unlike the malevolent forces that hunger for the absorption of the human will, seeking to diminish the individual by assimilating their essence into a greater darkness, the love of God operates through a radically different paradigm. The obedience he seeks is not the surrender of identity, but the harmonization of the human will with the divine, a process that enhances rather than diminishes the individual. This divine aspiration is to populate the cosmos with beings who, though minuscule in their likeness to the infinite, reflect his nature in their capacity for love, freedom, and self-giving. The comparison drawn between the insatiable emptiness of malevolent entities and the overflowing fullness of the divine essence underscores a fundamental difference in intention. One seeks to consume and dominate, the other to enrich and elevate. God envisages a family of spirits, united not by coercion, but by love, each freely aligning their will with his, transforming from mere servants into beloved sons and daughters. In this light, our sufferings and sorrows are not merely burdens to be borne, but are, paradoxically, gifts that draw us into closer intimacy with the divine. Through these experiences, we are invited to share in the very life of God, to partake in a reality that transcends our temporal afflictions, and to find in our Creator not only refuge but kinship, as we journey towards becoming reflections of his infinite love and goodness. 3. We are called to live by faith, not by our feelings. Screwtape writes, whenever they, humans, are attending to the enemy himself, God, we are defeated, but there are ways of preventing them from doing so. The simplest is to turn their gaze away from him towards themselves. Keep them watching their own minds and trying to produce feelings there by the action of their own wills. When they meant to ask him for charity, let them instead start trying to manufacture charitable feelings for themselves and not notice that this is what they are doing. When they meant to pray for courage, let them really be trying to feel brave. When they say they are praying for forgiveness, let them be trying to feel forgiven. Teach them to estimate the value of each prayer by their success in producing the desired feeling. And never let them suspect how much success or failure of that kind depends on whether they are well or ill, fresh or tired at the moment. In the labyrinth of human consciousness, Screwtape delineates a subtle yet potent stratagem employed to divert souls from the essence of their spiritual quest. This tactic hinges on the misdirection of focus. From the transcendent and outward-looking gaze upon the divine to an introspective, self-absorbed scrutiny of one's own emotional landscape. The peril lies not in the acknowledgement of one's feelings, but in the elevation of these feelings as the metric of spiritual fidelity and divine communion. Humans, in their earnest yearning for connection with the divine, often misconstrue the nature of faith mistaking the warmth of fervent emotion for the substance of spiritual communion. Screwtape advises his fellow tempters to exploit this misconception, guiding souls to chase after manufactured sentiments as indicators of spiritual vitality and divine favor. In doing so, individuals are led astray, ensnared in the pursuit of emotional self-engineering, rather than seeking to cultivate a steadfast reliance on God, irrespective of the fluctuating tides of feeling. This strategy of distraction seeks to undermine the very foundation of faith by insinuating that the authenticity and efficacy of prayer are contingent upon the individual's ability to evoke a particular emotional state. Thus, when a soul aspires to charity, courage, or forgiveness, the focus shifts from a sincere petition to the divine to a futile endeavor to conjure the corresponding sentiment within oneself. This inward turn not only distances the soul from God, but also engenders a false criterion for spiritual success, measured by the ephemeral and often deceptive barometer of feelings. Moreover, Screwtape illuminates the vulnerability of this approach to the vicissitudes of human condition, wellness or illness, vitality or fatigue, thereby revealing its inherent fragility and dependence on circumstance. In contrast, the true essence of faith transcends the immediate and the emotional, anchoring the soul in a trust and reliance on God that does not waver with the changing states of mind or body. To live by faith, then, is to maintain an unwavering focus on the divine, irrespective of our emotional state. It is to understand that the depth and authenticity of our spiritual life are not predicated on our ability to feel a certain way, but on our steadfast commitment to seek God, to align our will with His, and to trust in His presence and guidance, even in the absence of tangible emotional confirmation. This path calls for a relinquishment of self-reliance in the manufacturing of spiritual feelings, inviting us instead to a deeper, more enduring communion with the divine, rooted not in the transient, but in the eternal. 4. Fear is a liar. Screwtape writes, "We want him to be in the maximum uncertainty so that his mind will be filled with contradictory pictures of the future, every one of which arouses hope or fear. There is nothing like suspense and anxiety for barricading a human's mind against the enemy God. He wants men to be concerned with what they do. Our business is to keep them thinking about what will happen to them." Screwtape's counsel unveils a diabolical strategy predicated on the manipulation of fear, illuminating the shadowy mechanics by which souls are ensnared in a web of uncertainty and apprehension. The genius of this nefarious tactic lies not merely in the invocation of fear, but in the orchestration of a relentless cacophony of hypothetical futures, each fraught with potential joy or disaster. This maelstrom of conflicting possibilities serves to entangle the human mind in a perpetual state of suspense and anxiety, effectively constructing an impenetrable barrier against divine truth and guidance. The crux of this strategy is to divert the human focus from the present, where actions and choices forge the path of one's spiritual journey towards an obsessive preoccupation with the unknown and the uncontrollable aspects of the future. By fostering an environment where the soul is perpetually haunted by the specter of what might occur, Screwtape and his ilk achieve a twofold objective. Not only do they immobilize the individual with paralysis by analysis, but they also estrange the soul from the comforting embrace of the divine, who calls his followers to live in the trust and surrender of the moment. In stark contrast to this scheme of distraction and disquiet, the divine entreaty calls for a focus on the immediacy of action and the living out of one's faith through deeds and choices grounded in the present. This divine perspective champions a liberation from the tyranny of hypothetical futures, advocating for a serene trust in God's providence and guidance. It is a call to anchor one's life in the certainties of divine promises and the actionable aspects of faith, rather than in the quicksand of speculative anxieties. Fear, as characterized by Screwtape, emerges not as a mere emotion, but as a weaponized lie, a tool wielded with precision to sow discord and division between the soul and its maker. It is a smokescreen designed to obscure the luminous truth of God's unwavering presence and the inherent strength endowed to each individual to navigate the challenges of life with courage and faith. To dismantle the lies of fear, then, is to reclaim the sovereignty of the present moment, to focus on the concrete reality of God's love and commandments, and to engage in the sacred task of living out one's faith with conviction and purpose. It is a defiant affirmation of trust over trepidation, of action over inertia, and of divine truth over the shadows of doubt. In this light, the soul finds its fortress not in the elusive certainties of the future, but in the steadfast love and guidance of the eternal, whose perfect love casts out all fear. 5. God is the source of all good. Screwtape writes, "You are much more likely to make your man a sound drunkard by pressing drink on him as an anodyne when he is dull and weary than by encouraging him to use it as a means of merriment among his friends when he is happy and expansive." Never forget that when we are dealing with any pleasure in its healthy and normal and satisfying form, we are, in a sense, on the enemy's ground. I know we have won many a soul through pleasure. All the same, it is his invention, not ours. He made the pleasures. All our research so far has not enabled us to produce one. All we can do is to encourage the humans to take the pleasures which our enemy has produced, at times, or in ways, or in degrees, which he has forbidden. Screwtape's musings cast a revealing light on the profound yet often overlooked truth that every genuine delight and pleasure, in its pure and unadulterated form, is a reflection of the divine essence. It is an affirmation that all that is truly good, joyful, and fulfilling in the world originates not from the shadows of temptation, but from the boundless creativity and benevolence of God Himself. The Creator, in His infinite wisdom and love, has imbued the fabric of creation with an array of pleasures, each designed to enrich the human experience and to draw souls closer to the beauty and goodness that emanate from His being. However, the perversion of these divine gifts becomes a tool in the arsenal of those who seek to ensnare and divert souls from their celestial calling. Screwtape reveals the tactical manipulation of pleasure, not as an instrument of joy and communion, but as a means of entrapment. The strategy is insidious: to take what is inherently good and to twist its purpose and use, leading humans away from the moderation, gratitude, and mindfulness with which these gifts were intended to be received. This manipulation seeks to detach pleasure from its divine source and purpose, encouraging an indulgence that is disconnected from the context of love, community, and moral boundaries established by the Creator. By promoting the misuse of pleasure, whether through excess, inopportune timing, or inappropriate contexts, the malevolent forces aim to mire souls in a quagmire of fleeting satisfaction and spiritual emptiness, obscuring the true origin and aim of these divine endowments. Yet within Screwtape's admission lies a hidden encouragement for those who seek to navigate the complexities of earthly existence with integrity and purpose. It serves as a reminder that the enjoyment of life's pleasures, when embraced within the parameters of divine intention, is not only permissible but desirable. It underscores the reality that true joy is found not in the perversion of pleasure, but in its appreciation as a gift from God, meant to enhance our lives, foster genuine connections, and lead us back to the giver of all good things. Thus, the challenge for humanity is to discern the proper use and enjoyment of the pleasures bestowed upon us, to recognize them as echoes of the divine generosity, and to allow them to elevate our hearts and minds in gratitude and reverence towards the source of all that is good. In doing so, we reclaim the beauty of pleasure from the clutches of manipulation, and we celebrate it as a testament to the goodness and love of God, who desires our ultimate joy and fulfillment. 6. We cannot rightly claim anything as our own. Screwtape writes, "Men are not angered by mere misfortune, but by misfortune conceived as injury. And the sense of injury depends on the feeling that a legitimate claim has been denied. The more claims on life, therefore, that your patient can be induced to make, the more often he will feel injured, and as a result, ill-tempered. You must therefore zealously guard in his mind the curious assumption, my time is my own. Let him have the feeling that he starts each day as the lawful possessor of 24 hours. Through the cunning voice of Screwtape, we are ushered into a reflection on the profound illusion of possession that entangles the human heart. The suggestion that misfortune stirs anger, not in its own right, but when perceived as an infringement upon one's perceived entitlements, unveils a deep-seated vulnerability within the human psyche. This vulnerability lies in the erroneous belief that we hold sovereign ownership over certain aspects of our existence, be it time, possessions, or even our very selves. This belief, as insidious as it is widespread, becomes a fertile ground for discontent, bitterness, and strife. The admonition to cultivate in the human mind the notion that my time is my own serves as a strategic ploy to isolate the individual from the broader tapestry of communal and divine interdependence. It instills a false sense of autonomy and entitlement, leading to frustration and anger when the inevitable vicissitudes of life disrupt this perceived dominion. This mindset traps individuals in a cycle of grievance and disillusionment, as the myriad uncontrollable factors that impinge upon our lives are construed as personal affronts rather than as facets of the shared human experience. Yet, in the wisdom of this portrayal lies a subtle invitation to embrace a more liberating perspective. By relinquishing the fallacy of ownership over our time and possessions, we open ourselves to a deeper recognition of our fundamental interdependence and the grace that sustains our every moment. This shift in perspective frees us from the shackles of entitlement and resentment, allowing us to live with a sense of gratitude and openness to the unfolding of life's mysteries. To understand that nothing we claim as our own truly belongs to us is not to embrace nihilism or passivity, but to acknowledge the transient and gift-like nature of existence. It invites us to hold lightly to the things of this world, to cherish and steward them without attachment or avarice. In doing so, we align ourselves more closely with the divine economy of generosity and love, in which all things are given and received as manifestations of grace. This realization beckons us to a life marked not by grasping and grievance, but by gratitude and generosity. In the relinquishment of our illusory claims, we discover the freedom to love more fully, to give more freely, and to participate more deeply in the joyous communion that binds all creation. In this light, the very notion of possession is transformed from a source of strife to a call to stewardship and service, reflecting the boundless generosity of the Creator, from whom all blessings flow. 7. Humbling ourselves leads to greater love for ourselves and others. Screwtape writes, "To anticipate the enemy's God's strategy, we must consider his aims. The enemy wants to bring the man to a state of mind in which he could design the best cathedral in the world, and know it to be the best, and rejoice in the fact without being any more or less or otherwise glad at having done it than he would be if it had been done by another. He wants to kill their animal self-love as soon as possible. But it is his long-term policy, I fear, to restore to them a new kind of self-love, a charity and gratitude for all selves, including their own. When they have really learned to love their neighbors as themselves, they will be allowed to love themselves as their neighbors. For we must never forget what is the most repellent and inexplicable trait in our enemy. He really loves the hairless bipeds he has created and always gives back to them with his right hand what he has taken away with his left. In the intricate dance of divine paradoxes that Screwtape begrudgingly outlines, we find a profound spiritual principle. The path to authentic self-love and love for others is forged through the crucible of humility. This divine strategy seeks to dismantle the fortress of pride and self-absorption, not to denigrate the self, but to prepare the ground for a richer, more expansive form of love, one that transcends the limitations of ego and opens the heart to a deeper communion with the divine and with all of creation. The enemy's aim, as Screwtape reveals with a hint of disdain, is to cultivate in humans a state of grace wherein their talents and accomplishments, though fully recognized and celebrated, do not become sources of pride or self-aggrandizement. Instead, these achievements are understood as contributions to a larger tapestry, worthy of the same joy and appreciation, whether they are one's own or another's. This vision of humility is not a negation of the self, but a liberation from the isolating prison of ego, enabling a genuine recognition of the interconnectedness of all life. The divine project of quelling the animal self-love is not an end in itself, but a preparatory stage for the birth of a new kind of self-love, a love that mirrors the selfless love of God. This renewed self-love is characterized by charity and gratitude, not only for oneself, but for every being, recognizing the divine image imprinted within each. It is a love that understands the command to love one's neighbor as oneself, not as a call to diminish oneself, but to elevate and honor the divine spark within all. Screwtape's reluctant acknowledgement of God's ultimate benevolence reveals a startling truth, that in the divine economy, nothing truly given is lost. The sacrifices we are called to make, the self-love we are asked to surrender, are part of a divine alchemy whereby we are gradually transformed and made capable of a greater love, a love that encompasses both ourselves and our neighbors with equal fervor and devotion. It is a love that reflects the very heart of the Creator, who delights in giving back in abundance what was surrendered in faith. Thus, the journey towards humility becomes not a descent into insignificance, but an ascent into the fullness of love, where we find ourselves and our neighbors anew, bathed in the light of divine affection. In this light, we discover that the greatest love is not a finite resource to be hoarded, but an infinite flow that enriches us most when it moves through us, unimpeded by pride or fear, to touch the lives of others. In embracing this divine invitation to humility, we step into the vastness of a love that knows no bounds, finding in it our truest selves and our deepest connection to the world around us. 8. We are called to live in the present with an eye toward eternity. Screwtape writes, "The humans live in time, but our enemy, God, destines them to eternity. He would therefore have them continually concerned either with eternity, which means being concerned with Him, or the present, either meditating on their eternal union with or separation from Himself, or else obeying the present voice of conscience, bearing the present cross, receiving the present grace, giving thanks for the present pleasure." But we want a man hag-ridden by the future, haunted by visions of an imminent heaven or hell upon earth, ready to break the enemy's commands in the present if by so doing we make him think he can attain the one or avert the other, dependent for his faith on the success or failure of schemes whose end he will not live to see. In the intricate dance of time and eternity, Screwtape unveils a dichotomy central to the human condition: the tension between living in the moment and the human propensity to be consumed by the future. Through this insight, we are invited to ponder a profound spiritual principle: that our existence, while unfolding in the temporal realm, is ultimately oriented towards an eternal destiny. The counsel to focus on the present, infused with an awareness of eternity, is not a call to disregard the future, but to anchor our lives in a deeper reality that transcends temporal concerns. The directive to be continually concerned either with eternity or the present reflects a vision of life where every moment is imbued with eternal significance. This perspective encourages a mode of living that is deeply present to the immediate demands of conscience, to the crosses we are called to bear, to the grace that is offered here and now, and to the simple joys that dot the landscape of our daily existence. Such a stance fosters an intimacy with the divine, where the soul is attuned to the whisperings of eternity in the midst of the temporal, leading to a life marked by spiritual depth, gratitude, and purpose. Conversely, the strategy to ensnare humanity in an obsession with the future as a realm fraught with either utopian dreams or dystopian fears serves to sever the individual from the richness of the present and the eternal truths that ground our being. This fixation not only distracts from the divine invitation to cultivate a relationship with God in the here and now, but also engenders a state of perpetual anxiety, where the soul is alienated from the peace and guidance that flow from living in communion with the eternal. The manipulation described by Screwtape, urging humans to violate the divine commandments in the pursuit of a future heaven, or in the avoidance of an earthly hell, highlights a fundamental misunderstanding of faith and of the nature of divine promise. True faith is not contingent upon the outcomes of human schemes, nor is it a bargaining chip in the quest for temporal security or success. Rather, it is a steadfast trust in God's providence, a surrender to His will, and a commitment to live according to His commandments, regardless of temporal circumstances or outcomes. To live in the present with an eye toward eternity, then, is to navigate the journey of life with a heart anchored in the eternal love of God, responding to the immediate call of duty, love, and grace with the fullness of our being. It is to recognize that each moment is a gift from the divine, an opportunity to draw closer to our eternal destiny in communion with God. This way of living not only enriches our own lives, but also allows us to become conduits of God's love and grace to others as we journey together towards the fulfillment of our eternal calling. 9. Faith is not a means to an end, but an end in and of itself. Screwtape writes, "Once you have made the world an end, and faith a means, you have almost won your man, and it makes very little difference what kind of worldly end he is pursuing. Provided that meetings, pamphlets, policies, movements, causes, and crusades matter more to him than prayers and sacraments and charity, he is ours, and the more religious, on those terms, the more securely ours." Screwtape's keen observation sheds light on a subtle yet profound distortion that can infiltrate the spiritual journey, the inversion of means and ends, where faith becomes merely instrumental, a tool wielded for the achievement of worldly objectives. This perversion of purpose ensnares the soul, diverting it from the true essence of faith, a direct and intimate communion with the divine, sought for its own sake, not for the fruits it might bear in the realm of temporal affairs. The misalignment suggested, wherein the world becomes the ultimate aim and faith a mere mechanism to attain worldly goals, signifies a deep spiritual malaise. It marks a departure from the understanding of faith as an intrinsic good, a living relationship with God that is both the source and summit of human existence. When faith is relegated to the status of a means, leveraged for the attainment of political, social, or even personal ends, it loses its transformative power, its capacity to draw the soul into deeper union with the divine and to infuse life with the light of his love and truth. The emphasis on meetings, pamphlets, policies, movements, causes, and crusades over prayers and sacraments and charity epitomizes this shift towards activism devoid of spiritual anchor. While engagement with the world and its challenges is a necessary expression of faith, such engagement must flow from a heart firmly rooted in prayer, nourished by the sacraments, and animated by genuine charity. Absent these spiritual foundations, even the most noble endeavors risk becoming hollow, ego-driven campaigns that ultimately serve to distance the soul from God rather than drawing it closer. The warning encapsulated in Screwtape's advice serves as a clarion call to examine the orientation of our hearts and the authenticity of our spiritual pursuits. It invites us to recenter our lives on the primacy of a personal relationship with God, recognizing faith not as a tool for achieving temporal success, but as the very purpose of our existence, a journey towards God that is valuable and worthy in itself. In this journey, the fruits of our faith in the world, acts of love, justice, and compassion, are not the goal, but the natural outflow of a soul in communion with the divine, a testament to the transformative power of living in and through faith for the glory of God and the sanctification of the world. 10. The devil is subtle and cunning. Our policy, for the moment, is to conceal ourselves. I do not think you will have much difficulty in keeping the patient in the dark. The fact that devils are predominantly comic figures in the modern imagination will help you. If any faint suspicion of your existence begins to arise in his mind, suggest to him a picture of something in red tights and persuade him that since he cannot believe in that, it is an old textbook method of confusing them, he therefore cannot believe in you. Screwtape's counsel unveils the cunning strategy employed by malevolent forces to maintain their influence over humanity, the art of concealment through trivialization and ridicule. By embedding themselves in the fabric of modern culture as figures of mockery and caricature, devils in red tights, so to speak, they ingeniously deflect serious consideration of their existence and operation. This strategy exploits the human tendency to equate the absence of physical, tangible evidence with non-existence, thereby eroding the perception of spiritual realities that lie beyond the empirical. The devil's subtlety lies not only in the orchestration of temptations and misfortunes, but in the more insidious task of obscuring their very presence from human awareness. In persuading the individual that the concept of devils is antiquated and laughable, they effectively remove themselves from the realm of consideration, operating in the shadows unchallenged and undetected. This maneuver is particularly effective in an age characterized by skepticism and a predilection for rational, empirical evidence as the sole arbiter of truth. The brilliance of this strategy is that it does not require the outright denial of spiritual realities. Rather, it relies on the nuanced manipulation of perception, leading individuals to dismiss the spiritual realm on the grounds of its seeming irrelevance or absurdity. By equating the existence of malevolent spiritual entities with childish or fantastical imagery, they ensure that any nascent curiosity or suspicion is quickly quashed by the fear of intellectual embarrassment or by the individual's own rationalist presuppositions. Yet this very subtlety serves as a stark reminder of the complexity and depth of the spiritual battleground in which humanity finds itself. It calls for a discernment that transcends the limitations of the visible and tangible, urging us to remain vigilant and aware of the myriad ways in which spiritual forces influence the tapestry of our lives. Recognizing the subtlety and cunning of these forces compels us to arm ourselves with wisdom, faith, and a deepened awareness of the spiritual dimensions of existence. In navigating this landscape, we are reminded that the battle is not fought solely within the confines of human reasoning and empirical evidence, but within the deeper realms of the spirit. It is here, in the cultivation of a rich spiritual life grounded in prayer, sacrament, and scripture, that we find the strength and insight to discern the subtle workings of both good and evil, and to choose, with grace and courage, the path that leads towards light, truth, and ultimate communion with the divine. As we conclude our exploration of these 10 insightful reflections drawn from the wisdom of C.S. Lewis through Screwtape, I hope you found depth and meaning in our journey together. If this video resonated with you and you appreciate delving into the complexities of spiritual and moral understanding, please consider showing your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your engagement helps us to continue creating content that enriches and inspires. For those who are particularly moved by what we've discussed and wish to dive even deeper, I invite you to become a member of our community. Members will receive an exclusive ebook next month, expanding on the themes we've explored today and offering further food for thought on your spiritual journey. Don't forget to check the links in the description below for more resources and ways to engage with our content. Your support and curiosity mean the world to us, and we're excited to continue this journey together, exploring the profound insights that literature and philosophy offer to our lives. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again soon. Again soon. Again soon. Again soon. Again soon. Again soon.
God made us. He invented us. As a man invents an engine, a car is made to run on gasoline, and it won't run properly on anything else. Now, God designed the human machine to run on himself. He is the fuel our spirits were designed to burn, or the food our spirits were designed to feed on. There is no other. That is why it is no good asking God to make us happy in our own way, without bothering about religion. God cannot give us happiness and peace apart from himself, because it is not there. There is no such thing. This excerpt is from the book Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. God is attentive to every tear you have shed, to every silent plea you have made. He knows the depth of your suffering and the cries of your heart, and he is by your side, even when you feel most alone. Life can be extremely challenging at times. We all go through moments of exhaustion, when our strength seems to fade and our spirits feel low. In these times, it is essential to remember that you are not alone. In Matthew 11, verse 28, it says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." At the height of our battles, it can be difficult to see the light. When the weight of our problems becomes unbearable, it is easy to feel lost and lonely. Lewis says in Mere Christianity that relying on God has to begin all over again every day, as if nothing had yet been done. But in these moments, it is vital to remember a powerful truth. God sees your pain and hears your cry. God's purpose will always prevail, and his timing is always perfect. Therefore, let us trust in his divine timing and purpose, as it says in Lamentations 3:25, 26, "The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." In 1 John 3, verse 20, we find that even when our hearts condemn us, God is greater than our hearts and knows everything. So before you lose hope, my dear brother and sister, remember that God is still reigning on his throne. He is Jehovah Nissi, Jehovah Shalom, and he is God with us. Do not lose hope yet. God is aware of your exhaustion. Just be patient and wait for him. At the right moment, the time determined by your Heavenly Father, you will receive your blessings. Today I will share some essential biblical teachings about waiting on God. So prepare your hearts and minds to embrace this message. One of the most challenging aspects of being a Christian is the patience required to wait for God to answer our prayers. Lewis says in Mere Christianity, "I am sure that God keeps no one waiting unless he sees that it is good for him to wait." Every Christian has experienced this waiting period where it seems that nothing is changing. We often question why God makes us wait. However, I want to assure you that God's timing is impeccable. He is a God of order and precision, as stated in Isaiah 46:10. "I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times. What is still to come, I say. My purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please." He calls a bird of prey from the east, a man for his purpose from a distant land. This theme is repeated multiple times in the Bible. One of the most daunting challenges in life is waiting, especially when it comes to waiting on God. Many of us can relate to this feeling. You've poured out your soul in prayer and wondered, "God, why is it taking so long? Are you listening to me? Have you forgotten me? Do you care?" Maybe you're praying for relief from chronic pain, or for God to touch the heart of someone you love. In Jeremiah 33 verse 3 it says, "Call to me, and I will answer you, and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know." Perhaps you are looking for a stable job to support your family, healing for deep emotional scars, restoration of a broken relationship, or the blessing of a life partner. Waiting can be hard, but remember, patience is a virtue. The more you pray, the more it seems there is no answer. You cling to faith and believe with all your heart, but there is no clear sign from God, no indication that He has heard you, no evidence that He is working. All you long for is a sign, any sign. Lord, show me something, anything. And yet, sometimes there is nothing but silence. So what is God doing in these moments? Why does He seem so quiet? Remember the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis. Joseph waited years, enduring betrayal by his brothers, slavery, and imprisonment. But through it all, God was with him, arranging every detail. In Genesis 50:20, Joseph reassured his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph's journey teaches us that God's timing is impeccable, even when it is not apparent to us. Like Joseph, you may feel that you are trapped in a pit or a prison, waiting for deliverance. But let me reassure you that just because God seems silent, it does not mean He is not there. God is working, even while you wait. Behind the scenes, His goodness, power, provision, and grace are in motion. He is constantly working for your good because of His deep love for you. He is a loving Father with wonderful plans for you. He desires to bless you and see you thrive. So today we will discuss some principles about waiting patiently on God and open our hearts and minds to embrace these crucial principles from the Bible. And principle 1, God's delays are not God's denials. Lewis says in Mere Christianity, "I am sure that God keeps no one waiting unless He sees that it is good for him to wait. When you get what you want, it is always either something better or something entirely different. What we call asking for God's answer is merely the beginning of the right direction. This is the first move, not the whole." In a world that values immediate results, waiting is often seen as a waste of time. We live in a dynamic, fast-paced society where we demand quick outcomes from technology because our time is precious. Waiting seems counterproductive, as if we are missing opportunities. This period of waiting can trigger anxiety and doubt. We may start to question if something is wrong because waiting contradicts our culture of instant gratification. It is challenging to wait when uncertainty looms over us, when we are unsure of the outcome. Doubt creeps in, and we begin to question if God will come through for us. As doubt takes root, the temptation to take control increases. But here lies the danger. When we try to control things ourselves during the waiting period, things can go very wrong. Scriptures warn us that trying to manage situations on our own can lead to complications. We see this in Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight." However, when we are waiting for what seems like an eternity, when our prayers seem unanswered and time continues to pass, we are tempted to take control. Perhaps you are at this point of desperation today. You have waited, prayed, and trusted, but nothing seems to change. Doubt whispers, "What if?" And before you know it, you are tempted to abandon God, to leave your faith because He did not meet your expectations. But let me ask this: how long does God have before you decide to leave Him? How long before you end your relationship with Him? because he did not deliver on your terms. Remember, God operates on his own timeline, not ours. So in the midst of waiting, resist the temptation to take control. Trust in God's perfect timing, even when it seems like time is running out. Keep your faith. Hold on to hope and understand that God is always working, even during the waiting periods. Consider the story of Lazarus in John 11. Mary and Martha sent a message to Jesus that their brother Lazarus was sick, anticipating that Jesus would come and heal him. However, Jesus delayed his visit, resulting in Lazarus' death. When Jesus finally arrived, Mary and Martha were grieving and questioned why Jesus had not come sooner. But Jesus showed that God's delays are not denials. He performed a miraculous resurrection, demonstrating his power over death. Isaiah 55. 8 and 9 serves as a reminder, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." God's perspective surpasses our understanding. He sees the bigger picture and knows what is best for us. So when we encounter delays, let us not lose heart. Instead, let us place our trust in God's wisdom and impeccable timing. Let us have faith that he is orchestrating everything for our benefit, even when it is not visible to us. God's delays are not rejections. They are opportunities for us to strengthen our faith and witness his miraculous power unfolding in our lives. Principle 2. Patience is a virtue. Lewis says in Mere Christianity, "The great thing, if one can, is to stop regarding all the unpleasant things as interruptions of one's own or real life. The truth is, of course, that what one calls the interruptions are precisely one's real life, the life that God is sending day by day. What one calls one's real life is a phantom of one's own imagination. This at least is what I see at moments of insight, but it's hard to remember it all the time. In our lives there are times when it seems like God is delaying his response to our prayers. We pray passionately for healing, for provision, for breakthroughs, but it seems that God is silent. It is natural to feel disappointed, to question if God has forgotten us, or if our prayers are going unheard. Lewis says in Letters to Malcolm, "We must lay before him what is in us, not what ought to be in us. The prayer preceding all prayers is, may it be the real I who speaks. May it be the real thou that I speak to." We must remember that God's delays are not a sign of his indifference or reluctance to act. Instead, they are opportunities for more significant miracles, for deeper faith, and for his glory to be revealed. Just as Jesus delayed his visit to Lazarus to show his power over death, God's delays in our lives often set the stage for something extraordinary. In a world that values speed and immediate gratification, patience can seem like a forgotten virtue. We are used to fast food, high-speed internet, and instant results. We want things to happen according to our schedule and our plans. However, the reality is that God's timing rarely matches our expectations. Patience is more than just waiting. It is about resilience, persistence, and faith. It is about maintaining hope when situations seem bleak and surrendering our desires to God's perfect plan. The Bible, in James 5, verses 7 and 8, instructs us, "Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near." This is similar to the farmer who waits patiently for the harvest. We are called to wait patiently for the fulfillment of God's promises. Patience is not a passive state. It is an active choice to trust in God's faithfulness, even when our circumstances are filled with uncertainty. Let's face the truth. Patience is challenging. It is hard when we are dealing with obstacles, when our prayers seem unanswered, and when it feels like time is slipping away. Doubt creeps in, and we are tempted to take control, but rushing God's timing only leads to frustration and disappointment. Instead, let us embrace patience as a virtue, knowing that it fosters resilience and shapes our character, as stated in Romans 5 verses 3 and 4. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. Let us trust in God's impeccable timing, knowing that He is orchestrating everything for our benefit, as Romans 8:28 declares. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. And let us remember that the waiting season is not a waste of time. It is a period of growth, refinement, and preparation for the blessings that God has planned for us. So, in the midst of waiting, let us cultivate patience, knowing that God is faithful and His promises will be fulfilled in His perfect timing. Principle 3. Have faith in God's impeccable timing. In the Screwtape Letters, Lewis says, "The enemy desires that men be concerned with what they do. Our business is to keep them thinking about what will happen to them. The future is, of all things, the least like eternity. It is the most completely temporal part of time, for the past is frozen and no longer flows, and the present is all lit up with eternal rays. Hence the encouragement to direct their minds to the future, making them think about things they can't control, leading to anxiety that can only be fought with faith." The Scriptures guide us to let patience have its perfect work. Patience is not a passive trait. It is cultivated in the waiting room of life. You may not notice any visible change, but rest assured that significant transformations are happening beneath the surface. Patience exercises your spiritual muscles, making you stronger, helping you grow, evolve, and become more resilient. So do not underestimate the waiting periods, and do not be disheartened if things are not progressing as quickly as you hoped. Remember, the longer it takes, the more blessings God has in store for you. When your time comes, when God knows you are ready, the fruits of your patience will be far greater than you could ever imagine. We all have aspirations we are eager to fulfill, challenges we hope to resolve, and the desire to meet the right person. But when our waiting seems longer than anticipated, it is natural to feel discouraged and restless, questioning, when will this finally happen? However, sometimes the delay is not due to God's inaction, but because we are not yet ready for what He has planned. You might feel prepared for what you imagine, but if you could glimpse God's vision, you would understand that you are not yet equipped to handle it. You need more time to mature, evolve, and gain experience. Let's revisit the story of Abraham and Sarah in Genesis 21. God made a promise to Abraham that he would become the father of many nations. However, Abraham was 100 years old, and Sarah was 90 when their son Isaac, the fulfillment of God's promise, was born. Imagine the weight of waiting for a promise for almost 100 years. But God, in His perfect timing, fulfilled His promise. In our lives, we often find ourselves in situations where we eagerly await God's intervention. We pray fervently for breakthroughs, for healing, for provision, for reconciliation. However, it seems that God's timing is different from ours. We may feel impatient, anxious, or even doubtful, questioning whether God hears our prayers or if He will act on our behalf. Think of the wait as a time of preparation, refinement, and growth. Just as Abraham and Sarah faced challenges and obstacles during their waiting period, God used that time to mold them into vessels ready for the fulfillment of His promise. So, my dear friends, let us root our hearts in trust. Let us believe that God is faithful to His word, that He is working behind the scenes, orchestrating every detail according to His perfect plan. Let us wait with anticipation, knowing that when the time is right, God will fulfill what He has promised. As we navigate through this season of waiting, let us cultivate a mindset of gratitude, praise, and worship, acknowledging God's goodness, His sovereignty, and His unwavering love. Indeed, Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6, offers us profound truth. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. This verse encourages us to surrender our timelines, desires, and understanding to God. It invites us to place our absolute trust in His sovereignty, wisdom, and faithfulness. Even when the situation seems bleak, our faith should persist in prayer, even when the answers are delayed, a faith that recognizes that God's ways and timing are superior to ours. His timing is always perfect. Principle 4. Discover tranquility in God's timing. Lewis says, "In the screw-tape letters, men are not angered by mere misfortune, but by misfortunes conceived as injuries. And the sense of injury depends on the feeling that a legitimate claim has been denied. The more claims on life that your patient can be induced to make, the more often he will feel injured and, as a result, ill-tempered. For his mind can be directed to the present sphere of humility and quietness. Once he accepts this, he will find tranquility and a sense of peace." Psalm 46, verse 10, instructs us to be still and know that I am God. This verse highlights the importance of calming our hearts and minds, of pausing amid life's hustle to recognize God's presence and supreme dominion. In this stillness, we discover a peace that transcends understanding and guards our hearts against fear and doubt. Finding serenity in God's timing also involves appreciating the journey of waiting. Instead of perceiving waiting as a time of stagnation or frustration, it should be a time of reflection and deepening our connection with God. Finding tranquility in God's timing is a journey of surrendering control and trusting fully. It is about letting go of our need to control outcomes and embracing the certainty that God's timing is impeccable, even when it doesn't align with our expectations. Philippians 4, verses 6 and 7 offers comforting guidance. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This passage enlightens us that true peace does not come from having all the answers or controlling every situation. Instead, it comes from surrendering our worries and anxieties to God and finding rest in His supreme dominion. In a world filled with turbulence and unpredictability, finding tranquility in God's timing can be daunting. We may be tempted to worry, doubt, or try to control things on our own. However, genuine peace is achieved by surrendering our fears and anxieties to God and trusting that He is orchestrating everything for our benefit. As we wait with patience and anticipation, our faith is strengthened and our hearts are prepared to embrace the blessings God has planned for us. So let us embark on the journey of discovering tranquility in God's timing. Let us surrender our fears and worries to Him, trusting that he is in control and that his timing is always impeccable. And let us find comfort in the assurance that while we wait with patience and anticipation, his peace will guard our hearts and minds, guiding us toward a deeper connection with him. Principle 5. Have faith in God's supreme dominion. Lewis speaks in Mere Christianity. Imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, perhaps, you can understand what he is doing. He is getting the drains right and stopping the leaks in the roof and so on. You knew that those jobs needed doing, and so you are not surprised. But presently, he starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably and does not seem to make sense. What on earth is he up to? The explanation is that he is building quite a different house from the one you thought of, throwing out a new wing here, putting on an extra floor there, running up towers, making courtyards. You thought you were going to be made into a decent little cottage, but he is building a palace. He intends to come and live in it himself. Proverbs 19 verse 21 clarifies that while a person may have many plans in their mind, it is God's purpose that will prevail. We can devise our own plans, but in the end, it is God's plan that stands. During periods of waiting and uncertainty, it is easy to question God's supreme dominion. We may wonder why certain events are happening, or why our prayers seem unanswered. But in these moments, we must remember that God's ways and thoughts are far superior to ours. We may not always understand his plans, but we can trust that he is orchestrating everything for our benefit. Trusting in God's supreme dominion also implies having faith in his perfect timing. It involves recognizing and yielding to his authority and control over everything. In a world filled with unpredictability and turbulence, placing our trust in God's supreme dominion can provide a sense of comfort and strength. Psalm 103, verse 19, serves as a potent reminder. The Lord has established his throne in heaven, and his kingdom rules over all. This verse powerfully underlines that God is in command, even when situations seem out of our control. His plans are superior, his ways are grander, and his purposes will triumph. Trusting in God's supreme dominion requires that we surrender our desires, our plans, and our will to him. It involves recognizing that he knows what is best for us, even when it is not visible to us. Just as Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11 assures us, he has made everything beautiful in its time. We must remember that God's timing is impeccable, even if it doesn't align with ours. We may become impatient and weary during the wait, but we can have faith that God is faithful to his promises, and his timing is always precise. So let us place our trust in God's supreme dominion, recognizing that he has control over everything. Let us surrender our plans and our will to him, and let us find comfort in knowing that he is orchestrating everything for our benefit. As Romans 8, verse 28 says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." So, my dear friends, take time to be still and listen to God's voice. In the silence of your heart, you will find your assurance. He is saying, "My child, I see your pain. I hear your cry. Trust in me, and I will carry you. Hold on, for the dawn is coming. Your perseverance will lead to victory, and your faith will be your guiding light. God knows you are tired, but he also knows you are capable of extraordinary things. Keep going. You are never alone. May divine strength and peace fill your heart and soul, guiding you through any challenges that may come. If this principle touched you, express your affirmation by typing, "God is always with me," in the comment section below. I proclaim that all the blessings of this prayer are now granted to you in the name of Jesus. Thank you for joining me today. If you found this video meaningful, please like and share it with your friends and family. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell for more inspiring content. Have faith, maintain patience, and trust that God is working behind the scenes. Wait on God, for He is faithful. Your pain will not last forever, and your cries will not go unanswered. Trust in His plan, for He is preparing a future filled with hope and joy. God sees your pain and hears your cry. Hold on, for His promises are true, and His love is eternal, is eternal, is eternal, is eternal.